This is still making Macy laugh. I've been listening to podcasts, and people do this naturally. Don Miller always is like, when we come back.
Let me try. When we come back.
Let's have you do it.
Me do it right now?
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Okay. Okay, we're back, and from our break.
We take a break during that musical transition.
We did. We took a break, went down to the 7-Eleven and got a Slurpee.
We didn't. We didn't. Hey, everybody.
Oh, my goodness. It is recording. Do you want to start with the hey, everybody?
No, you should. Let's
just see what it's like.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And now I'm nervous. Hey, everybody. It's no small thing. I'm Macy.
And I'm Scott.
Welcome.
We're trying a new format this week where Macy says, hey, everybody, instead of me. We took a week off, and that was because we've mentioned this in the past, but Macy and I work together at a church as youth people, pastors / workers / volunteers.
Youth is really interesting, too, in terms
We're not
of
volunteers. We're paid. We're paid staff.
Family people.
Yeah. It's University Presbyterian Church. Yeah. Go look it up online. And we were at Lake Shasta on houseboats last week. Lake Shasta is in Northern California. It's beautiful.
It's like shockingly beautiful.
Yeah. And so we were gone, but before we left, Macy recorded some 21 Pilots rants.
Yeah.
And we posted those for your convenience and your enjoyment. And I'll have to say,
I think we mostly posted them because I had to do them.
Maybe that's your interpretation, but I think for those that listened, when I listen personally, it's sort of Macy uncut, and that's a good thing. I think it's enjoyable to listen to you, as Macy would say, pop off. Whether you're a 21 Pilots fan or not, that's the whole point has been. I like to imagine there is a personality out there that would enjoy listening to someone passionately talk about 21 Pilots.
Just pop off about 21 Pilots.
So there it is.
There it is.
We did that.
Yeah. Oh, so we did that update, and there's been no new real content with 21 Pilots. It's just, it feels like every time I listen to it, it's new content, and how much it still is inspiring me. It's been really affecting my life.
Since your rants, the songs have been released.
Yeah.
That was pre-songs, right?
But the second rant, the songs had already come out.
Oh, right.
But I hadn't sat with them for that long. I had only really listened to them with Shasta. Now I can sing them all. Now I can, I know them and I've memorized them and I can sing them, which means I know them way differently.
That would be another good bonus episode, is just you singing and
Oh, gosh. Maybe.
It has been fun to watch Macy learn the rap from Nico and the Niners, and she took this very seriously.
It's really hard.
This is the funny thing is, in my high school years, there were raps. I memorized the rap from If I Ruled the World by Nas, and I memorized several raps. I remember memorizing Bad Boy by Mace. And if that still comes on, it's a long rap. I got every single word memorized.
You know it, yeah.
And that's fun.
Oh, yeah.
Memorize a rap.
It's so fun.
Why not?
People, if you've never memorized a rap,
Ooh,
you should memorize a rap.
Maybe that's a challenge for our listeners.
Especially
memorize a rap.
People who don't like rap music, I think it would help you to understand rap music, because that's when you, rap music just lets you feel it.
Can we encourage maybe a listener or two? Yeah. If you're out there, record a rap.
Oh, yes!
And tag us. It'd be so fun. Record yourself doing a rap. But what I would say personally is the request is learn a rap. Don't do one you already know. Learn a new rap. Or fine, go ahead and do a rap.
But no, I think learn it.
Learn a new rap and post yourself. Maybe we'll do it.
I will do it.
Ooh, I'm scared, but
I am. Well, I think the human voice is really interesting right now. Yeah. So I'll do it.
Maybe I'll just do an audio file. I'd be really nervous to have myself. Okay. Macy's putting together a very mysterious catalog of friends' audio singing, and we're gonna all find out about it later. She's being very coy. I
am being coy and cryptic, not on purpose, only because in my mind it is still cryptic. the thoughts.
That's good. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen.
Yeah, so we got a lot of content. We also, to our listeners, if you listen to our Steven Universe episode, you know how much that show means to us, and we just received 5 of the most special, sweet, monumental, progressive episodes.
What a great word.
What a word.
Great word to introduce into our podcast, Macy. I hadn't thought about that before.
Oh. Here we are, roasting. We're really trying to go banter tonight, I guess.
Full banter. Yeah, well, I like the idea that, we can't always be, especially as the episodes continue to pile up and evolve, like we can't always be referencing the things we've covered in the past, but I can't imagine there's going to be constant updates on the Enneagram and constant updates on Kanye. It just so happens
that there's so much.
It just so happens that 21 Pilots and Steven Universe are doing big things right now.
And Chance the Rapper.
Yeah, and Chance the Rapper. Well, don't even get into that. We'll do an episode someday.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah.
And
big things are happening.
And just the spirit.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of content. I feel like there's something going on.
Okay.
The vibes.
That's good. I like it.
The vibes.
Okay, so should I say
blessed.
what we're doing this episode?
Yeah, let's tell them.
Let's tell them. That we're going to title this, I think, and I'm going to say it, but maybe it'll change when I actually do the title.
Drum roll.
The title of this episode is Wilderness and Holy Ground.
Yes.
There it is. And it is based on the talks that we gave at Lake Shasta. So at Shasta, Macy and I each gave a talk, and we were covering Moses and the Burning Bush.
Yeah.
And this was meant to introduce a series that we're trying to do with our teens/youth this summer on God encounters. So this was the first one, and I think we had a lot of fun preparing for it. We spent an afternoon in the SP library.
Afternoon.
Yeah. And as people listen tonight, I think what I want people to understand is when we speak. I'll just speak for myself, but I think you resonate with this. When I speak about Scripture to high school students, I try to engage Scripture in a way that is honorable to the text. But I also try to incorporate something that would mean something to a non-Christian. And I also try to incorporate science in a way that maybe the Scripture says this, but regardless of if you believe in the Bible, this is still a wise and valuable thing to be engaging with. So trying to eliminate the barriers.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
You always keep those things in mind?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't keep those in mind at all.
One thing which will be interesting for this podcast, one thing that I personally keep in mind, and I don't know if this is a 5 Enneagram thing, maybe it is I oftentimes wonder what someone would think if this talk was being broadcast to the general public. Meaning,
ooh, interesting.
Like come at me. Like, am I saying something that is offensive or can be picked apart, or is this just something we can all agree on? Like, I like to think that I'm saying something that isn't.
You would rather people come at you. You want to be.
No. Let me rephrase that. Like, I'm like, you can't, basically. Like, I'm saying something that's so obviously like not common, but could be agreed upon by maybe like what I was trying to say, like the scientific community and the spiritual community.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I think there's a certain type of person that would think, oh, I'm watering down my message. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm not saying some sort of niche rogue statement that can only be accepted by my little cult of people in my own little echo chamber.
Yeah.
I like to think that
it's engaging with the world.
It could stand scrutiny.
Yeah.
It could hold up under scrutiny.
That makes so much more sense now.
Okay, thanks. You always help me clarify myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I don't think about any of that.
You don't think about any of that, and it seems like you do. That's the interesting thing. Like, I feel like your talks would hold up under scrutiny.
That's sweet. I only think I have good talks if I just have to believe everything in it. And it just has to let it come. But that only is with a lot of pre-discernment. I think there's such I don't know what we're talking about, but I just feel like in my
What are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Now I'm talking about how I really think about giving like a message almost. But like I like to be really thoughtful about it and then be really like honest with my thought like around the text or around the concept. And I think that like if I'm being thoughtful about it and I share like my responses, that like it will maybe hopefully remind others that they can be thoughtful about the text and hopefully they're encouraged.
Well, maybe you're just a very thoughtful person that says wise things. Because I really like what you say. I guess we're being really complimentary of each other.
We love each other.
Yeah. But I guess just for those that are listening that don't really know what we're talking about, we're talking about like speeches / sermons.
This is a really weird
giving
like,
speeches to high school students.
It's kind of
some people don't
rogue.
understand. People will be like, "Oh, you're a minister." You know, I'm like that's always such a funny word to me.
Yeah.
But like pastors, we give talks.
It's a really strange role.
It's a subculture.
Play. It's a subculture too. So if you don't know it, like welcome to this crazy subculture. You might get to like learn something about this world we live in. We're all living in different worlds.
That's true.
We really are.
Yeah. We're all very comfortable with our own worlds.
Yeah.
And it seems natural to us, but it wouldn't seem natural to somebody else.
Yeah.
Thoughts, big thoughts. So that's our intro. We're excited to present our content for the night. And when we come back, we'll start with our talk about wilderness.
Oh, good.
Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about wilderness. And this is interesting because on our trip to Lake Shasta, I'm talking to high schoolers. Macy and I are still learning to balance this concept of talking to each other in a conversational way and also talking to listeners.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to, do both simultaneously. So
Yeah, here goes it.
Yeah. So Exodus starts with the story of Moses. And yeah, do you want to say something about Moses?
Can I just say a few things about maybe for people out there who don't understand or who like maybe don't like the Bible or don't understand it or maybe are like uncomfortable with Christianity, just like a different way to understand how text can be inspiring.
Say a different way for text / scripture to be inspiring.
Yeah.
Macy, go.
So I just think like if you're out there and you don't know much about the Bible or this isn't, I don't know, you don't care about it or you don't believe it, I still think that this text, I think a lot of people could say that regardless of if it's this holy book that was written by, like, I don't know, whatever, it's inspired a lot of people. This text, this story has inspired a lot of art, a lot of music, a lot of community, a lot of good things. Yeah, some really crappy things too. But I think that as whatever, people who are trying to share this text, like we just want to honor that it's like at least an inspirational text. And so I think everybody has something to draw from that.
That's good.
So
it's very well said.
So like enjoy this as like just a meditation or like this text inspires us. So maybe it can inspire you.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Oh, I hope you enjoy it. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's a gift.
If you're not enjoying it, just turn it off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Bye. It was fun.
That's so good.
Okay, Scott's now going to talk.
I'll say, you were saying this is a rich text, and what we're going to say tonight isn't even scratching the surface.
Oh no!
I don't even think it's like. Let's think of a surface. Scratching the surface. This isn't even putting your hand on the surface. This is like your hand hovering over the surface.
Yeah.
This is getting near something. It's not even really getting in. Oh
my gosh.
Yeah.
So dramatic. But truly, Exodus in itself is incredibly rich. Exodus, the story of Moses, incredibly rich. Exodus 3, incredibly rich.
Yeah.
Every word in this text is so thoughtfully, beautifully placed, and there's been so much thought around it. Oh, it's inspiring.
So I'm just going to say a few things about wilderness, and like what I said is I will try to connect that to some more practical modern practices that I think would be beneficial for people. So in the beginning, it talks about Moses through many circumstances. I'm not even want to get into it right now.
Okay.
Through lots of different conflicts, and one major conflict is pushed out of his context and has to flee. This is there's two ideas of wilderness that are presented through Scripture, and one is somebody in the midst of a conflict that's fleeing, or somebody is searching. So fleeing or searching. Those are two. I'm sure there's more, but those are the two main. Do you want to say something to that?
No, I'll say more about wilderness later.
Okay, great.
Because I heard something different.
Oh, great, perfect. Do you want to say it now? Might as well.
Well, I've heard of
The
wilderness.
wilderness is godless?
Yeah, it's this place where like it was also an interpretation almost of like a defiled place, or a place where like God was a godless place, that like a God was not there. There wasn't the presence of God in the wilderness. It was this,
That was the assumption at the time.
Yeah.
For whoever was writing these
Yes,
texts.
that's a good way of putting it.
So I just don't want to get caught up in all of the backstory of Moses right now. I want to focus on wilderness.
Okay.
And this is kind of interesting for anybody that cares about this sort of thing, but the Hebrew word used in this passage is midbar. And so wilderness, midbar, it can also be translated desert, wasteland, desolate land. But this is interesting too, because think of those. Then there's also open country and suitable for grazing.
Oh, I have so many thoughts.
So it's very multifaceted.
It's incredibly multifaceted. Yeah. There's so many 21 Pilot thoughts in my head.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to get to that. I think Macy's going to incorporate some 21 Pilots thoughts into her
I'm sure.
portion. So I think what I was trying to get the students to reflect on is Moses first gets pushed out into the wilderness by needing to run away from something toxic that's happening in his life. And so that's one of the ways we can use Scripture, is to find the parallel in terms of the way it fits into what we're going through. We're meant to do that, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you were giving this on the first night of us arriving on these houseboats, and we're in a new place.
Oh, let me say that really quick.
Yeah.
And who knows? If you can picture us, listeners,
Yeah.
we get on a bus here in Seattle, and we drive 10 hours in a bus with high schoolers.
More than 10 hours.
So we're fleeing. Not running, but like we're getting out of here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's dramatic. We're in a huge bus, and we're driving and driving and driving and driving and driving.
There's a journey
Yeah.
to get to where we are.
And even that, you know, to introduce some new language, I've heard of that as like a third place. The first place is the place you're leaving. The third, and then you're going to a place. But the third place is the like containing structure that helps you get there.
Wow.
And it's a place to process and to prepare. That's another concept. But so we're on this bus, and we're heading to Shasta, and we get to Shasta, which looks completely different. There's a huge snow-capped mountain in the middle of like a dry desert, and if you've ever been to Lake Shasta, look it up online. It is a very unique place. It's a massive lake with all sorts of like nooks and crannies and twists and turns, and
shockingly beautiful.
It is, and it looks like wilderness.
Oh, it does. It's rocks everywhere.
Red rocks. I don't know. It's really unique.
It's so special because Shasta means a lot to like a lot of my family. Oh,
that's sweet.
It's a holy place.
So we get there and we get on houseboats. So we've already been traveling, and then we get on these houseboats, and then we go out into nowhere. Like the cool thing about Lake Shasta and these houseboats is you go find your own little private place where nobody else is. So in terms of setting up and doing a first talk to these teenagers, we are out in the wilderness. And it's pretty cool because if you can picture this, whoever's speaking, I'm speaking the first night, Macy's speaking, and some of our other volunteers spoke the other nights.
And Rebecca.
Yeah, and Daniel. Let's just shout him out.
Yeah.
And all good talks.
It was really...
Yeah. And so all these students are on top of these houseboats, and we're on top of the houseboats with them, with like the sun setting and this quiet, massive lake, and surrounded by mountains and trees, and we're out in the wilderness. And this is like the first talk. So we're meditating and thinking and contemplating on the concept of wilderness. And so we invite students, and I'd invite listeners and everybody to think about something in your life that you're trying to get away from, that you need space from. And that's important. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to be intentional about trying to get space from something that you are feeling overwhelmed by or wrapped up in, that's toxic, that's hard, and I think I would encourage people to say not just not just get away for the sake of getting away, but going out for some sort of a divine encounter.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it seems like in Scripture, people are pushed beyond their will, pushed out. Like circumstances are so bad and dire that people are pushed out into the wilderness on their own. And I guess I would say, if you find yourself in that situation, who knows? I mean, every situation is unique, but maybe be open to what's about to happen.
Yeah.
You know. So you see, already we're like talking about Exodus and Moses and stuff, but it's immediately applicable. And it doesn't even have to be whether you believe this or not. Believe the Bible.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's inspired word.
Yeah, it's useful. But wilderness, this is the thing. This is what I'm saying about standing scrutiny. It is true that wilderness is a theme in Scripture, that Jesus is immediately pushed out into the wilderness before his ministry begins. That's just
wilderness is used throughout Scripture constantly.
Yeah.
And this is in the very beginning stages of this being used in the sense of like this whole big story.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are getting pushed out in the wilderness.
So Moses was pushed out into the wilderness, and then it doesn't seem like...
You talked about white space.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, great.
So that's being pushed beyond circumstances, sort of beyond your control. But then there's a second thing of either choosing or being drawn out into wilderness. And that more seems to be in concert with, you call it the divine, call it God, whatever. But it seems to be more like I'm following God out into the wilderness because I know it's good for me. So here, I'm just going to introduce two things that I think were helpful, and I hope this makes... I hope this is helpful. I hope this is helpful. We're not just doing like a book report on our talk. Like, I'm hoping this is helpful for people.
No. Well, we want people... I hope this is enjoyable too. I'm enjoying hearing this again.
Oh, good. Okay, so I had 3 points, and I'm only going to focus on one tonight, which is sort of creating this space in which you can encounter God. That's it.
Yeah.
In a healthy, big way, in your own way. And so one of the things I talked about is this concept of white space. And I've read about this in several different books. This is a blog that I marked in my computer years ago. And it's actually not that long ago. And here, I'm just going to read part of it. We're talking about this concept of white space. And it seems like I'm going to read about this, but it's like an art and design phrase that has been co-opted by like psychological circles. I think I might have read about this for the first time in Psychology Today, which is a magazine. But this,
I think of Yearbook.
Yeah. So it says in design, white space is negative space. So think about this in terms of wilderness. And then think about this in terms of your life. In design, white space is negative space. It's not blank space because it has a purpose. So think about that. It is balancing the rest of the design by throwing what is on the page or the screen into relief. The white space helps focus your visual attention.
Oh.
Then this blog goes on to say, I'll shout out the author in our show notes, whatever. Now, let's expand this concept of white space beyond the world of graphic design. What if you analyzed your daily schedule, and I'm going to add weekly, monthly, yearly schedule, with an eye toward design? Have you preserved enough white space within your daily workflow? Or does the way that you design your day look extremely busy and cluttered? We need white space in our daily lives just as much as we need it in our designs because the concept carries over. If our lives are overcluttered and overbooked, we can't focus properly on anything. And then she goes down to quote this author, Eldar Shafir, from something called Time Scarcity. So I'll just read this. Because we are preoccupied by time scarcity, because our minds constantly return to it, we have less mind to give to the rest of life. This is more than a metaphor. We can directly measure mental capacity, or as we call it, bandwidth. We can measure fluid intelligence, a key resource that affects how we process information and make decisions. We can measure executive control, a key resource that affects how impulsively we behave. And we can find that scarcity reduces all of these components of bandwidth. It makes us less insightful, less forward-thinking, less controlled, and the effects are large.
Wow.
So it just goes on to advocate for this concept of white space. But one more thing I want to read just to drive the point home is it's just creating space in your life. So going out into the wilderness. And here she just says, here are some examples just to get very specific of what we're talking about. And this is essentially what we are trying to get our students to do on this trip to Lake Shasta. Sitting quietly and letting your mind wander. That's what we're talking about.
That's it.
That's essentially it. And it's something we don't do. And it's not with a phone. It's not with a device. It's not even with like a sketch pad. It's just sitting and staring off and letting your mind wander. But listen, here's some other ones. Free drawing with no specific objective.
Oh, yes.
It almost gets you like choked up.
For it.
Going for a walk around the block. Simple things, people.
Guys, everybody needs to stop and do that.
Doing a mini workout.
A mini workout.
A mini workout. Taking a power nap. Automatic writing. I don't even really know what that means.
Whatever that means, I have a feeling it's you just write whatever and you let it go and you don't stop yourself, which sounds great. I'm here
People
for it.
watching.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all I do.
Meditating. And the last one is just playing.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it sounds so sad because it seems like in the last 10 to 15 years, these are things that would have come naturally for most people and oftentimes don't come naturally.
Yeah.
And so we're missing it.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I'm trying to connect this concept of wilderness taken from Moses in the book of Exodus to current research that says this is something that we need in our lives. We need to get away. And maybe it's literally running away in a really aggressive way, or maybe it's just casually taking a break. But we need to create these moments of white space in our lives where we can, let's just say.
This is really making me, it's crazy when I think about how students.
There he is. Yeah, go ahead. Students?
I think it's just crazy hearing you say that and thinking of all the different reasons and like why students ended up coming to Shasta and like what they left behind.
They're all bringing something.
And some they came with hopes and some they came like actually running. Like my parents are mad at me right now and I don't want them come. Like I'm going home to mad parents. That's stressful.
And they are. Some of them are.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. If any parents are listening to this, maybe you don't even know that your kids think that.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's something I think is really interesting? I think in doing like youth ministry, you really get to hear how much kids like are without realizing it trying to please or like fit an expectation that like it's not even like it's parents' fault, but it's just like that expectation is set and like I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's totally true.
I'm getting choked up.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, it's heavy.
Wilderness.
Wilderness. So I'll just wrap up this little segment. I'm going to read something from The Self-Driven Child in a second. But
Wait, what book?
Yeah, Self-Driven Child. I've posted this on our Instagram. I like it a lot.
That's like...
There'll be a season. I go through seasons with books. Pretty soon I'll be in a different book. But this one I'm still... As Macy would say, I'm still popping off to The Self-Driven Child.
It's unlocking him.
Yeah. It's inspiring me as a parent. But what I would say in terms of wilderness for this portion is sort of hearkening back to what I was saying in terms of, let's just say you're not a religious person.
Yeah.
This is still helpful. We all need white space in our lives. We need space where we're not filling it with stimulus. And it's healthy. It's one of the healthiest things you can do.
Can I just say something about how, regardless of how religious you are, it is really helpful to have spiritual practices. When you think about religions and you like pull them back and you look at them all, they all have these spiritual disciplines and practices, which are essentially reminding us of that. What is prayer, but not just sitting with your thoughts and letting yourself wander?
Yeah.
And like, it is worshipful to make music or say your thoughts out loud or paint something or doodle, like all of those things. And it's worshipful to go outside and like walk around. Like that's, those disciplines are really there for a reason. Meditating's a discipline. Celebration is a discipline.
Celebration is a discipline, yes.
Like
absolutely.
Enjoying life, that's a discipline, a part of what it is to be in religion. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, let's walk through this life intentionally.
Yes. Here we go.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, I like to be able to think that, say there's somebody listening that just isn't on board with the Bible. This is still helpful. Let's say you are on board with the Bible. Well, that's what we're trying to say is spiritually, it's important to go out into the wilderness as a spiritual person.
Yeah.
And there's significance in that, and Scripture has, one of the phrases we often use is univocal. It's like
We do?
it doesn't really, well, I do. I've heard it used. It doesn't really contradict itself on this point. You know, wilderness seems to be an
hear what you're
important theme.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's whatever you want to make of that. When we come back, I'm going to read a passage from The Self-Driven Child.
When we come back.
Yo.
Okay, so like I said, even if you're not a parent, I think this is helpful because this is called the self-driven child. And I mean, the essential wisdom of this, or the base wisdom of this, is that we all need to take ownership of our lives. So even if you're not talking about parenting, the wisdom in it is your life is going to turn out better if you're taking ownership of it. So whether you're 30, 40, 50-year-old, this is important.
Yeah.
As a parent, it has implications for your parenting style. But anyways, in the chapters of this book, and this ties into our theme of wilderness, they're talking about like how you help implement this concept of the self-driven child into your kid's life. And they have a whole chapter called Radical Downtime. Radical downtime. So think about this in terms of wilderness. And then think about it. What I was trying to do is link this to our students. So I told them, I do this with my own kids. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old. I don't know how smart this is, but I try to tell them about the things I'm reading about parenting. Yeah. I'm like, look, I'm reading this book on parenting. It says you need radical downtime.
So we're going to try it, guys.
Yeah. So I know I'm just reading tonight, but I think this is just so good. And I'm just going to read a few passages from this book.
You should do like bedtime stories. Scott
oh my gosh, too. Yeah.
Stories.
The crazy thing is that one of the authors, William Stixrud, I think that's how you must say it, and his name is probably Bill, is going to be in town in late August, and Delaney said we may be able to interview him, which would be crazy.
Oh my gosh. Would you be starstruck?
I don't think I'd be starstruck, but
I think
he's not like
be.
famous. But I'd be very honored. I'd be honored.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so for whatever it's worth, let me read this. This is about parenting, but I think it applies to all of us. This is about radical downtime. There are many forms of downtime. Anything that is relaxing or rejuvenating, like gardening or reading, we're all for. Yet, as the pace of life goes faster, we need to radicalize our downtime. Radical downtime does not mean playing video games, watching TV, surfing YouTube videos, texting with a friend, or participating in organized sports or activities. It means doing nothing purposeful, nothing that requires highly focused thought. This is one of the most powerful things that we can do for our brains. It is enormously important as an antidote to the mind-scattering and mind-numbing effects of 24/7 technology and multitasking.
Holy flipper.
Yeah. Isn't that so good? So it's not even
so
about parenting.
Good.
Yeah, it's for all of us.
Oh, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So, I mean, another thing they talk about, even more important than downtime, is sleep. They're just like, the most healthy thing you can do for yourself is get some freaking sleep. So I'll read one more little passage here, and then I'm going to ask Macy a few questions, and then she's going to talk about holy ground and the
You're
burning
going to
bush.
ask me some questions?
Mm-hmm. Very easy, simple questions. Okay, so this is just going on in the same chapter from The Self-Driven Child on this chapter called Radical Downtime, and hopefully it helps. It says, our culture values getting things done, but research shows us just how important it is to do that mind wandering. Jerome Singer, a legendary cognitive psychologist, was the first scientist to suggest that the mental state in which the mind is allowed to wander freely is, in fact, our default state. Singer further argued in his 1966 book, Daydreaming, that daydreaming, imagination, and fantasy are essential elements of a healthy mental life. These elements include self-awareness, creative incubation, autobiographical planning, consideration of the meaning of events and interactions, taking another person's perspective, reflecting on your own and others' emotions, and moral reasoning. All of this leads to what we think of as quote-unquote aha moments. The musician, best-selling writer, and neuroscientist, I love your reactions, Daniel J. Levitin emphasizes that insights are far more likely to come when you are in the mind-wandering mode.
This is so true.
Yeah, than in the task-focused mode. So let me just read that again. Insights are far more likely to come when you are in the mind-wandering mode than in the task-focused mode.
This is the most accurate words. I'm really resonating.
And I'm going to keep reading, but I'll just say
Sorry.
no, please. And I'm going to say for myself personally, I find my biggest insights happening on long runs. That seems to be a meditative place for me. And I don't listen to music. But this seems to fit with what I experience in my life. So I'll go on. It says, it is only when we let our minds wander that we make unexpected connections between things that we did not realize were connected. This can help you solve problems that previously seemed unsolvable. This is the last little part I'm reading. The more efficient the DMN is at toggling on and off, the better you become at processing life events. When it's time to pull yourself out of that daydream and to turn back to the many constant stimuli of your life, your brain is primed and ready for action. People with an efficient DMN do better on tests of cognitive ability, including measures of memory, flexibility of thought, and reading comprehension. People who are efficient at toggling their DMN on and off.
Wait, what's DMN?
I think they defined that earlier. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Where is that?
It's something, guys.
I could find it. No, it has to be somewhere.
DMN. I could just look it up.
Yeah, look it up really quick.
Oh, look at the babies.
Why would they just introduce that without saying it?
They probably introduced it in the very beginning of the book. Dallas Morning News. Default Mode Network, Neuroscience.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's
Default Mode Network.
Well, we had to Wikipedia it, and it is Default Mode Network in neuroscience. The Default Mode Network, also Default Network or Default State Network, is a large-scale brain network of interacting brain regions known to have activity highly correlated with each other and distinct from other networks in the brain.
Perfect.
Wow.
So when I'm saying DMN...
Wait. Can I read one more thing? The default mode network is most commonly shown to be active when a person is not focused on the outside world and the brain is at a wakeful rest. Oh,
That's what we're saying.
Rest?
Wakeful rest. It's a phone drop. That's not a mic drop. It's a phone drop. Okay.
Oh. I have so many thoughts. Just think of car radio. I'm sorry.
A car radio.
Car radio is about this. 21 Pilots. Listen to it.
There's always a connection.
There's
All right.
always a
So
connection.
when we have that in mind, the default mode network, I'll just start that paragraph over for my own self. The more efficient the DMN, default mode network, is at toggling on and off, the better you become at processing life events. When it's time to pull yourself out of that daydream and to turn back to the many constant stimuli of life, your brain is primed and ready for action. People with an efficient DMN do better on tests of cognitive ability, including measures of memory, flexibility of thought, and reading comprehension. People who are efficient at toggling, I love this, toggling, their DMN on and off have better mental health. It's like having an efficient stress response, which turns on quickly when needed and turns off quickly when not. In people with ADHD, anxiety, depression, autism, or schizophrenia, the DMN does not function efficiently. It's harder for them to toggle back and forth between looking in and looking out, resulting in too much daydreaming or excessive self-focus.
This is messed up.
Yeah. When we ruminate, we're not toggling efficiently. We're getting stuck in thought when there's something in front of us we should be focusing on instead. So it's big. Those are big things.
Really? Okay. What are your questions?
We're talking about the mental health of kids, but we're saying to listeners out there, we like to think that we're spreading something positive out into the world. And I would say, try to create some freaking space in your life.
Please create some space.
Yeah.
Find whatever it has to be for you. Find it. It's painting for me.
And and I want to say, this is the crazy thing about all this. Logically speaking, it's if you're an efficiency obsessed person with getting things done, the common wisdom says you're actually going to be more efficient and you're going to get more things done if you take breaks and you create white space and you have radical downtime.
You learn to figure out what's essential, and then you can master certain things, and you can see the bigger picture. You can see where you fit in.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I have thoughts about this in the sense of how we even decided to do these talks.
Please share your thoughts. I don't even have to ask questions. What are your thoughts?
Like the way we kind of went about this was in a sense, almost Lectio Divina, which is a fancy way of saying divine reading. We just decided to read the text, and then like I think we just started writing down words that stood out to us. And then from there kind of said, oh, I'll take this one, I'll take that one. And then there was no structure. And like I knew for me, I wasn't going to come up with a talk like when I sat down and was like, I'm going to come up with a talk. Like it was going to happen just when I was like able to be free and thinking.
What is your personal white space or your personal radical downtime? Like what do you do that you find to be, as we like to say, wholesome?
On some level, it's painting. I mean, that's probably the biggest.
I don't know
way.
if you've explained that much
What do
to
you mean?
listeners. What is painting to you? What do you do?
What is painting to me? You ask such big questions.
You haven't posted anything like that on our Instagram. I guess you posted a few things this week, but I don't know if people would have known that those were your paintings. How do you paint?
How do I paint? I sit down and I just pick up a brush and I start painting. That's it. But it is a spiritual. I mean, it's kind of a spiritual practice. I like didn't give myself permission to be artistic until like about 3 years ago on this like retreat, and I realized that was oh my gosh, that retreat, the only thing the retreat was radical downtime. That's literally looking back at it, it was Deb Nondorf. She just laid out different things that we could do. Anyone could do what they wanted. You could go take a walk. You could go do whatever. And I just sat and was mesmerized with creating and just like, oh, I just get to do this. And so from then on, it's just a part of my life is just having to create something. And it's typically painting. And painting feels the most wholesome and the most grounded and the most like I'm in touch with earth and the spirit.
Love it.
I'm such a hippie.
Don't laugh at that.
I'm such a hippie.
Good.
I really like to paint with my hands. If I'm like, okay, wait, you know what? People, if you want to know how I paint, go and listen to the 21 Pilots. Like when I talk about kitchen sink, I'm talking about that. And I think that's radical downtime on some level.
I just like to paint the picture. Paint the picture of what Macy is all about. You know, this isn't a very sunny area, but summers tend to be pretty sunny. And so Macy has a huge porch area where she lays out all of her paints and supplies and canvases, and we'll just sit in the sun all day and paint.
This is true.
And that seems like radical downtime to me. And you're usually pretty inspired and happy. Like if you text me and say you're painting, I feel very at ease. I know you're like in a very peaceful place.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not like, oh crap, she's painting. What does this mean? You know, it's like
what is
it's like, oh, she's painting. It means she's really
she's just
happy.
like really doing
being
happy. Yeah.
So I guess we're saying and encouraging people to say, what is your radical downtime? What is your happy place? And just
like
putting some parameters around it, being like, you know, it really can't and shouldn't be looking at a screen. Honestly, we're saying that to teenagers, but we're saying it to all adults.
Yeah, and you know, we're probably going too long, but when I was in high school, I had to walk my dog every day. And my parents were really like, in my mind, was like, they're so strict about it because I had like laid out all of this, like, if we get a dog, I'll walk it every day. And like everybody else's parents never follows up on that. Mine, of course, did. And every single day I had to
Bill
walk my
and Janet,
dog.
woo!
They're crazy.
I know, my kids will say, my friends' parents don't make me do that, and then I pat myself on the back. I'm like, all right, I'm a good parent. I'm like, you're actually complimenting me when you say that.
Yeah, no. So every day, like, had to walk Zoe, but honestly, like, got to walk Zoe, and it was that like white space on so many levels, and I didn't know that at the time, and I don't even think my parents knew that. You know, it's just that's what it was. Yeah, and what it became.
I think one of the weird things about it is that it's not sexy. It's so, you know, it's not sexy. It's so subtle and small, and it seems like in order to do something big and helpful for your life, you should like jump out of an airplane or something. It's like actually take a nap. Actually just go for a walk. Yeah. That will help you so much. Yeah. At least that's what everything's telling us.
Like give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah. 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 Give yourself permission to chill out. When we come back, Macy's going to talk about Holy Ground. And she gave a great talk on our Shasta trip, and we're expecting big things from her tonight.
We're expecting big things.
All right, so just to paint the picture, again, painting a picture. I gave the first talk on our trip, our first speech, message, whatever.
Yeah, it's such a funny, what is it? Who knows?
And then following the text, following along in what we're talking about in this passage of Exodus, what happens when Moses goes out into the wilderness is he encounters this infamous burning bush. And that's where Macy picked up. So
Yeah. I think I want to read the scripture,
Please.
actually.
That's missing from this podcast tonight.
Yeah, I know. I think I just
glossed
want to read
over it.
Everybody we'll see how this goes because I don't remember the order in which I gave the talk. I just remember the things I shared. So here we go. I'm going to start with, where does it begin?
Are you starting at Moses, or are you starting when he goes out into the wilderness for the burning bush?
When he goes out in the wilderness. I mean, I know it's Exodus 3.
I think that's at the beginning of 3.
Yeah, no, it's the very beginning. Okay, I'm also reading Common English Bible, which is,
Ooh.
I think, a really fun and cool translation. It wouldn't be my first pick, though.
That's a rogue
It's kind of rogue.
translation. Common English. Let's see what it says. I'm intrigued.
I know. I am partial to it. I actually really like it.
This is Bible nerds talking about translations.
Well, because translations are everybody.
No, I know,
Your translation is
but
biased.
in our realm,
Let it
somebody's
be known.
like, we know what you mean by New Living and NRSV and
Yeah, but do people know
NRSV.
how biased their translations are?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like you and I are like would nerd out on translations
Yeah.
and which is more valid
Yeah.
and what is actually
I don't think valid's the right way to put it, but
a paraphrase.
They're each bringing a perspective. They're bringing it's a translation. I just think we have to be thoughtful that that's what it is from an original text that was probably just more an oral tradition. So like,
Okay, so this is the Common English.
Common English.
Okay, here we go.
are. Okay, so Moses was taking care of the flock for his father-in-law Jethro, Midian's priest. He led his flock out to the edge of the desert. And he came to God's mountain called Horeb. The Lord's messenger appeared to him in a flame of fire in the middle of a bush. Moses saw that the bush was in flames, but it did not burn up. Then Moses said to himself, "Let me check out this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't burning up." When the Lord saw that he was coming to look, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." Moses said, "I'm here." Then the Lord said, "Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, because you are standing on holy ground." He continued, "I am the God of your father, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, and Jacob's God." Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God.
There it is. Wow. yeah, and if we were at youth group or church, we'd say this is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
Wow, that is, again, guys, this text is really rich. Really rich.
Okay.
That's
Macy.
so funny that I didn't even say wilderness.
Burning bush.
Burning bush, holy ground. Okay, so
Taking off sandals.
Taking off sandals, yeah. So as we were, I don't know who suggested doing burning bush. When it might have been me, a student that was suggested. In my head, I already knew I wanted to talk about the concept of holy ground. Like, I think I
Who
might
suggested it?
I think I might have charged this.
Sure, I believe it. I don't remember, but that seems to be on brand.
So I've this concept of holy ground is something that's been in the concept itself has always kind of stuck out to me in scripture. So I was really excited to talk about it. But as I was preparing, I guess, for giving this talk, I did a little bit of what we call biblical exegesis, which is looking at different ways people have interpreted the text and just trying to kind of be inspired by their interpretations, I guess. And so I learned a lot in just doing that. So I feel like, I guess I'll just share about some of those things to begin with, which in the translation, we talked about wilderness, and what I thought was so interesting is you gave your talk, and then I was oh, I had a different understanding of wilderness completely.
That's great.
And I was I'm going to go back and look at this and see if it's right. And it was in some level, in this one person, their interpretation. So I was all right, I'm just going to go with it. So wilderness is this place, if you want to interpret it this way, that is what is not supposed to be holy. It's this place that's the defiled place, the gross place. It's the garbage place almost.
Oh man, I'm already being taken back to your talk. And this is what is so, for whatever it's worth, we're being really sort of self-deprecating and jokey about these terms, like biblical exegesis. but it's something that you're good at, so you don't have to be like all downplaying it and stuff. And I also like the idea like this reveals how much time and attention we put into these things. Like we're pretty intentional, but there is no one way to look at this stuff.
No.
Like
I think there ever is.
I had two thoughts about wilderness that I thought were pretty spot on. And as you're talking, I'm already reminded, like, you had a completely new, not even different or contrary, new way of looking at wilderness that I thought was really important. So there it is.
Thanks.
Here we go. What is it?
Yeah, so
Defiled,
this like gross place. And that to me was so interesting because about 3 years ago, I read this book. 3 years ago, I think it was like 5 years ago. I think I'm older than I remember because it was my freshman year.
You're 23.
I'm 23. It was.
Did you know that?
I was 18 at the time when I read this book called Submerge in my introduction to global and urban ministry class at SPO.
Who taught the class?
Leong. In that class, I was a freshman, and that class scared the crap out of me. I was like,
wow, man.
It was so heavy. For a freshman, I was so much, but it was so good.
Makes me love SBU.
And so we're reading this book, and in it, there's this guy, John Hayes, who is a pastor who is doing what is called like incarnational ministry, which is inspired by this idea that Jesus is God fully human, and it's Jesus, like God, like Emmanuel, God with us, and that Jesus, the way God meets us is by living amongst us, and that's how Jesus met us. And so it's this idea of being a pastor that just lives in a neighborhood, and like your role is just to be Jesus of the neighborhood, kind of, and like you're often like sponsored by a church to just do that, and that is your vocation. And John Hayes was, I don't know, I think chosen, lucky enough to be called to this like beat down area in LA. And he talks about how the first night he like was moving into this, it's called Mini Street, if you know LA, I don't. And he and his wife had just moved in, and they like had no idea what this was going to be like. And he felt the urge to go outside and like walk along the street. And he said that like you could see just like this broken glass, and you could hear people screaming in the background, but he just heard in his voice like, take off your shoes, for where you're standing is holy ground. And there's just something like so profound about what that is, and like the sense of being in the wilderness, and that this was this place that was what society had thought was unholy, or what like the Egyptians had thought was holy, or what everybody had thought was like God doesn't meet you there. Like you'll find God at like the temple, or you'll find God in all these places, but like it was Moses who was in the wilderness, in this like what is called the unholy place, that like he's called to take off his shoes and stand on the holy ground. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. The concept of holy ground is so wild. I have so much more to share.
Well, and just thinking about our own experience last year on a mission trip to LA, where we were in Skid Row and had like our own divine encounter. I mean, you made like a painting of it.
Yes. I made a painting, and I painted it as an angel.
Yeah.
I should post that.
Yeah, you should.
It's a drawing, not a painting.
Yeah, and we're walking through, I imagine, some of the most provocative, maybe is the right word, and disturbing parts of America in terms of like an urban, like it's where all the homeless folks in LA, most of the homeless folks in LA gather, and it's they're just down there in tents, and the crazy thing is it seems intimidating at face value, and then once you start walking amongst these people, there's community, and they're kind to you, and
they're kind to each other,
it's I don't know what to say to it, because I don't want to also put like a positive varnish on it, like it's so beautiful, because it's also disturbing, but maybe the best way to say it is like what you're saying, it's somehow holy ground.
It's no less like it.
You can encounter God
will
there.
Meet you just as much there as God would meet you in the most beautiful Sistine Chapel, or at the top of a mountain, or in your home.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of this, is that God is or whatever, divine encounters are happening everywhere.
Yeah.
It's in all of these places of our lives that we can have them.
Yeah, and I probably would have to say from a Christian perspective, God is more
More.
present in those hard places.
I think theologically that does have grounding in the sense of what it is that for God to be one with us is God to die and to like ultimately like face our deep, like what is often humans' deepest fear. You know,
We don't want to hear it.
we don't want to hear it.
That's a hard truth.
Yeah,
It's challenging.
It's challenging and it's also encouraging.
We want to be in the safe
think
places.
about being in a dark place and the idea that the God that God isn't a God that's above you and like gonna pull you out of it, but God's a God that's going to run down to you and meet you there, and like together you guys will come out of it.
I don't know. You're adding a different dimension.
I'm not talking about something completely different.
No, I know. You're adding another great dimension to the concept of wilderness. Like we start with this idea of white space or radical downtime, which is this healthy, peaceful place. But you're also saying it's important to acknowledge that God meets us in these very real, tangible, earthy, troubling, unexpected
I think
places.
both are unexpected.
Unexpected, yeah. That's the theme from the text, it seems like.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
Okay, so I think another thing about this text
You
that's
have
super
good stuff to say.
that like I loved about it as well in my like rereading through it is this idea of like how is Moses respond? So we have this burning bush. How is Moses like what is his response? And like what leads Moses almost to like being told to take off his sandals? Because I think Moses plays a role in this. And it's so in the text he sees the burning bush and then like he's intrigued. It's like it's very poignant that Moses could have walked by and been like, oh, there's this bush. Oh, I'm going to go keep doing my thing. But he sees it and he goes further. And then as he goes further, he sees, oh my gosh, this is a bush that's not being consumed. So it's upon his like curiosity that he then hears from the bush, Moses, Moses. And his response is, here I am.
So good.
Like his response is, here I am. Like, what is that in the sense of just like, here I am raw? Just like, all I have is just myself for you. Like, I didn't expect to meet you here, but here I am. And then the response from the bush is, take off your sandals, for where you're standing is holy ground. And like, what does that mean to take off your sandals? There's so many different things that it could
Literal
mean.
sandals, metaphorical sandals.
Like, what does that mean? And like, there's all of this stuff. Like, is sandals maybe is because they're made of animal skin and like it's holy ground. And so like,
yeah. You said that.
Yeah. So it's like this idea of like, in terms of like religious sacrament and like animals are often considered unholy. So it's like, take off your sandals if they're made of animal. It's kind of more like a practical ceremonial interpretation. But there was another interpretation about this idea of it being just like in terms of respect, like it's holy ground. Another one about this idea of take off your sandals because this ground is clean. Like it's clean ground. So you don't need sandals here. It's clean ground. But then my favorite, which I talked about, was this idea of take off like your sandals, like your home. Like it's this,
I love that. Comfy.
it's comfy. It's a comfy place. Like this.
Take off your sandals.
Like, take off your sandals. You're on holy ground. Like, you're home. Like, Moses had just said, like, I'm here. Like, here I am. There was, like, a sense of rawness. And, like, Moses, there's nothing Moses could do besides
that got me legit choked up.
There's nothing that Moses could be besides be himself with God. And God invites that in and says, come and be comfy and take off your sandals. Like, you are invited into this place. And Moses like enters into that, and it's just his curiosity that leads him there. And then there's nothing else that you have to be besides be yourself, and you can have this divine encounter, I think.
I think so too. And there's so many places in the
it's
Bible
there.
where God says, do not be afraid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Be comfortable.
Be comfy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. And so you presented that. Like, I love that people would maybe listening and think this is over the head of teenagers. And I can testify, like, kids are tracking.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. Is this over the head of teenagers?
No, I think people would think that though, because this is heavy stuff. And there's so many areas, there's so many, again, like little rabbit trails you could go off on this about, like, again, science and psychology and saying this is scriptural, and there's so many exegetical layers to this that you could delve into. But thinking about the psychological significance of the things we do to prepare ourselves for a moment. So it's, whether it's washing your hands before a meal or praying or anything, saying the word of the Lord, like things that are probably more for us than anybody else. And thinking about like the idea of a ritual that helps prepare you.
Are for us.
Yeah, prepare you to be in the presence of the divine, taking off your shoes, whatever it is. But that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe since I'll just close with
In closing, I'd like to say.
But I feel like
I think you got to talk about the flowers.
Yeah. So this was okay. This is so funny. Is I had
Get ready.
absolutely no real intention of talking about them.
And let me, I can cut this out if it sounds like I'm micromanaging.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is that you were noticing these flowers around Seattle before 21 Pilots started talking about flowers. And that's the trippy thing. I hope you emphasize that. It's the weirdest coincidence.
Yeah.
In your life especially?
I know.
It's so personal.
It's like really personal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had like the way I typically roll is often last minute. First of all, everybody. Especially in terms of things
Seems
like
to be
this.
working so far.
It's not for lack of effort. It's just I have to think about something until the end, and then it's like, okay, I guess I got to pull it together because I'm just going to think and ruminate on it until ruminate. I don't know if I should. But I mean, honestly, I like kind of came up with the talk right before.
Well, that's saying something, isn't it? It's like
in terms of there's a lot of preparation, but it's like once you're up there, it's like I've prepared. I'm going to say the word for this group of people, what they should hear. And I had been like, maybe I'll talk about the flowers. This feels like a good fit. And I was like, I don't know. And I kind of threw that idea out. And then as I was up there, I like really was like, guys, I don't know if this is going to fit. I think I said that.
You did. It was endearing, you know, like, yeah.
And I was like, there's these yellow flowers, everybody. And
Hey, everybody.
Have you seen the yellow flowers? And there are these yellow flowers that I think probably in February or March started showing up so Seattle's made up of all these neighborhoods, and there's the U District, and there's Wallingford, and there's Fremont, and there's like Finney Ridge, and these are all neighborhoods that are kind of connected, and in Ballard. Oh yeah, they're up to Ballard. And I drive along this area and live my life in these neighborhoods a lot. And there are these yellow flowers that just started popping up. And they're just these graffiti yellow flowers that are so simple. And they're typically on trash cans or just on like random posts. Some are small, some are big. And once I started to notice them, it's like you start seeing them kind of like popping up everywhere. And they have like been so like helpful to me on some level. Like seeing them, it's this like, it is this holy ground. Like it becomes that. And it's
or a burning bush.
Or a burning bush.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really cool way of putting it. That like leads me to holy ground. Oh, wow, cool. It could be both. But they're these sacred flowers that just represent so much. But I mean, I think if I were to like, oh, what does it really represent? Probably just this concept of hope and like color. And if you listen to the top rants, I talk a bit more about them in terms of like they come, and Matthew explains it, like they started showing up in the winter and like when it's really dark and there's very little sun and very little color. And they like really like on some level, like emotionally and spiritually, like got me through. And it's crazy, everybody, because I gave this chat to all the people about these yellow flowers, and I was like, everybody, like, you should look for the yellow flowers, like, or just like have your eyes open and like be aware that God could meet you in any of these places. Like, we're living our lives, like, are we awake to the fact that we could just say I'm here and be met? Which is crazy in the sense of what's happening in 21 Pilots world, in that 21 Pilots this is we're on the same freaking wavelength. 21 Pilots, their like new thing with they've created a very cool, I think, conceptual album, and they've laid the foundation for what is to come. That's going to be, I think, amazing. And they have this music video, and in it, the like biggest symbol is this yellow flower that pops up as like Tyler's facing his inner demons, and it's this hopeful thing, and the color yellow becomes this imagery for hope, and it's been just adopted by the clique. It's been adopted by 21 Pilots fans everywhere, and this color itself has taken on a whole new meaning, and it's just kind of wild to me in how much it felt like I needed to say that about the yellow flowers and share about the yellow flowers, and then like I didn't even know this, but like that's the theme. Yellow flowers is like this theme of hope. It's so holy. Or a burning bush. It's something.
Yeah, it's so good, and it just is an example of this idea of people. I've heard it said. I'm not gonna even try to figure out who said this. That we should treat the other or people as icons, not idols. Idols are somebody or something that we elevate to a place that is fixed and not human or even changeable. And an icon is something that we get lost in the depth of meaning. And so we sit and meditate on it and let it continue to increase in meaning. And it can probably seem a little overwhelming, but if you just take the concept of like a yellow flower and then add all these layers of burning bush and holy ground and hope, it can be, if you'd like it to be, a spiritual practice. Making a yellow flower an icon, and especially something around Seattle where every time you drive by it, you're reminded that there is hope, and you can sit and think about it.
Yeah.
If you want.
If you want.
It seems fruitful. I mean, I think Macy and I both approach this stuff through a very particular lens. Call it Enneagram 4 or 5, I don't know, but like it seems good to me. Maybe others wouldn't.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I have to believe there's a wisdom to it, regardless of what type of personality you are.
Well, you know what I think it's funny about the yellow flowers is, like, to me, like, I noticed them, I think, pretty quickly once they started coming up. Like, I think it was just, like, obvious that I noticed them, and I didn't have to do anything to notice them because they just really, like, hit me at the right moment. But, like, you don't even, I have to really point them out to you to see them.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting
and you're locked
to
in.
me. Yeah, like, I, like, now have the eye for it. I saw a new one the other day. It's so fun when I see a new one. Also, well, this you can edit out, but a student of mine texted me a picture of one and was like, thinking of you. It's so special.
Wow, that's so good. There
Isn't
it
that
is.
sweet?
You got to post it so other people can see it.
Yeah. I'm working on a big project around the idea of these yellow flowers, and I'm trying to take pictures of them all with disposable cameras, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that works out.
Let me introduce one more concept. I've
Let's
also
do
heard
it.
it said in terms of our faith life, Christianity, whatever you want to call it, like that we're meant to be more tour guides as opposed to travel agents, which means travel agents talk about destinations that they've never been to, whereas tour guides have mapped out the locations and says, let me show you what I've seen.
Wait, what are we supposed to be?
We're supposed to be tour guides, not travel agents. So that's what I experienced you as in terms of pointing out these flowers. You're like taking me on the journey, and you're like, look, there's the flower, there's the flower, there's the flower. A travel agent would say, head to Magnolia, you may see some flowers. I've heard there.
Oh,
It's
I
like,
hear
you haven't been there. You don't understand. You've never experienced it, but you're telling people about it. I've used.
Does a travel
for
agent
mission
just like
trips.
you walk in and you say, I want to go to this place, and then they plan most of it for you?
Yeah, a travel agent may or may not have actually been to the place that
I
they're
hear you.
sending you off to.
Yeah.
A tour guide.
They know the place intimately, and they're inviting you in to enjoy it with them.
I guess I'd probably consider like. I think of the image of like Ride the Ducks here in Seattle. You know, it's like I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but it's like they're taking you to places that are well known to them. You know, but yeah, I mean, you've pointed out those flowers on several occasions. You know, and it helps me. It helps me, and we can do that as friends.
I love to point them out, and someone recently was like, I need you to point at least one out to me. Because I think once you start to see one, then you can see them all. And there's one very obviously for people if they're trying to figure out what exactly they look like. There's one very obviously as you're on 45th crossing I-5 on your left. It's really big, and that shows you what it looks like. And then from there on, you're going to see them if you're going down 45th.
What if you ever met the person that did these? That'd be crazy.
I can't even imagine. If you are out there, you mean
It's a
so
call out.
much to me.
Who are you?
I am thankful for you. I think you, me, Tyler, we're on the same wavelength.
Tyler Joseph.
We can see yellow. Can they? I don't know.
East is up.
East is up. Oh, don't even get me going.
But I think I just want to say for anybody that may not be thinking on these terms, this is a metaphor. You know, like the yellow flowers are literal, but they're also a metaphor. They're a literal boost. You drive through Wallingford and you say, "Ooh, a fun yellow flower." But what we're also saying is, if yellow flowers represent hope, we as friends in life can say here's hope, here's hope, here's hope, here's hope, like hopefully pointing this out to each other as we go through life.
Yeah.
You know, or here's burning bushes, here's divine encounters, here's God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if there's anything else, maybe we should have said this in the beginning because this is what we started Shasta with. I got up there, I had no idea either what I was going to say. And I was like, the word of the week for me is, I guess, being open.
What your method worked. For whatever it is, it felt probably to you a little freewheeling and maybe, I don't know, what did it feel like?
Can I tell? You know what? I had big thoughts on this of why that method worked.
Yeah.
I trust that community. We have built trust.
Huge.
And the fact that we have a team, trust each other, and I know that everybody there is like rooting for me and like only hopes the best for me, and that like even just these students, they feel I don't know, there was a trusting community, and I knew that like I had a good heart that's gonna show through.
You had the best of intentions.
The best of intentions with a loving, trusting community. Like I don't think much can go wrong.
Wow, that's profound. Because you killed it. It was so good.
Open. Yeah, so I think if that's another invitation, it was just like to be open to maybe open to this new idea of a burning bush, or open to this idea of wilderness. And you know, something else, we're probably heading towards the end, but I have been recently like drawn to this idea of like, take from it what you will. Like, find one line in this podcast. If you listen to this end and you made it all the way here, find one line that resonated with you and maybe meditate on that and think about that. Like, we spout a ton of things out, and everybody's spouting a ton of things out, and we're all on different wavelengths and resonating with certain things. Just like find your things and like trust that those are profound for you, and you can find meaning and live into that.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of heading into like a moment of closing thoughts, but I think that's it. I think you said the closing thoughts.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Guys, everyone, thanks for listening to this podcast.
especially if you made it to the end. I think some people. I would say half the listeners probably make it halfway through.
I think so.
If you made it to the end.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we
thank
appreciate you being here with us.
And I think we're saying, I guess in terms of our content, this is another new thing.
We really went like Jesus-y.
We went Jesus Bible.
Which is so funny.
Yeah.
But so fun, I guess. We're really nerds about this.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have to own it.
Oh yeah, I'm here for being a nerd.
And I hope we presented something that was beneficial.
I hope so. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's beneficial, and maybe it just made you laugh.
Maybe this is like one big comedy routine. Burning Bush as wilderness.
Feels like
Look at these jokes we're telling everybody.
Catch you later.
Oh my gosh. All right, we say Macy's put down her microphone, but I oftentimes say we've said good night, but we should just say goodbye. Macy's put down her microphone, and now we're saying goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.